Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
The wife told all her intentions to her friend, but she didn't know who was behind it all. Today's first part of a story with a similar plot. Enjoy it! Even when I pulled into the long-term parking lot next to the pier, my thoughts wandered. Why the hell am I going on a cruise? I hated boats. Well, it's not really hatred, more like a healthy aversion. Okay, we're kind of friends. I mean, I tell you my story and you listen, so I can be honest. I'm damn scared of being on the high seas, no matter how big the boat is. In fact, if I had to be at sea, I would prefer a small boat. In a small boat, there is less chance of drowning, you're closer to the water. Since you're going to end up in the water anyway, it makes more sense to be closer to it. Maybe it's all those damn boat movies that are to blame. Have you noticed how every damn boat movie ends or starts with the boat sinking? Think about it, the Poseidon Adventure, Gilligan's Island, and especially Titanic, damn boat sinks in all of them. And here I am, on what should have been the happiest day of my life so far. Today, I married the girl of my dreams. Only 2 hours had passed since our wedding, and I was already getting ready to board this damn boat. The whole idea filled me with horror. Only the hum of my Mustang's powerful engine calmed me. Looking out of the parking lot windows, all I could see was a boat. Jesus, she was huge. I've been reading the specs on this thing since we booked our honeymoon on it. The numbers simply did not convey its enormity. This thing was a floating city. I knew it was big, but this thing was huge. When you read something like 1,181 feet long, you think, okay, it's long. But let's imagine this on a real scale. This boat is almost as long as 4 football fields side by side. It's almost a quarter mile long. So, this damn boat is longer than the street you live on. Its weight is approximately 225,000 tons. Okay guys, do the math for yourself, it's about 450 million pounds. I have no words. All I can think about is how much it would hurt if someone dropped that boat on your foot. I don't think even the Incredible Hulk could lift that boat without a hernia. This boat is 272 feet tall at its highest point. So, even if you jumped off it during a storm, with or without a life jacket, you'd be as dead as Disco hitting the water that fast. I don't want to get on this damn boat. I know for sure that my life will never be the same again. So why am I doing this? I do it for the same reasons that all men do things. Yes, there is a woman involved. In my case, it's Danielle Mason, or Danny. She is my ex-fiancée and current wife. Danny is beautiful. There are no other words. She is tall with long blonde hair and large green eyes. She worked as a secretary for one of my friends, and I fell in love with her from the first meeting. My name is Caleb Storm. No, it's actually not. My fault, my mother was extremely religious. Unfortunately, she died when I was very young. I never really got to know her, but I know it was probably for the best, because I gave up on church almost immediately. Neither my father nor both sets of my grandparents could convince me to go there. So, back to the present. Danny and I collected our bags from the taxi that followed us from the hotel where we snuck out during our reception. There was no way we could fit all these bags into the trunk of my Mustang. For me, like most guys, I travel light. But Danny seemed to have an entire beauty salon in her suitcases. She took out her BlackBerry and texted her best friend, Emma, who was also on the cruise. And yes, I paid for Emma to come with us too. They have been roommates ever since, and Emma just ended her relationship with her last boyfriend. It was an emotional blow for poor Emma, so Danny thought she should come with us. After all, from now on, it will be just the two of us. So why not have one last adventure with old Emma to cap off their time together? She acted like she and Emma wouldn't be friends anymore after this. I didn't understand this myself. Danny tried to explain to me, saying that now that we were married, she couldn't hang out with people like Emma. She needs to connect with people like us. Oh my God, I forgot to tell you, I'm pretty rich. Well, I'm not very rich myself, but my family is. I went to top schools, got a degree in finance, and got a job as an investment banker. I have a good salary and I'm frugal, but sometimes I don't mind spending. So maybe in Danny's eyes, We have to hang out with a certain set of people, and Emma doesn't fit in anymore. I hope she stops thinking like that soon, but I married her, so I'll let her play queen for a day until she comes out of it. It turned out that Emma was still at our reception. She will arrive here before the ship leaves in an hour. I wanted to get there early so I could get used to the ship a little before it started moving. This boat has 16 passenger decks, bars, nightclubs, shops, a casino, a gym, and even a jogging track. We checked in with Danny holding my hand the entire time. She was so beautiful. Our cabin was beautiful too. It contained a bed with a lace canopy hanging from the ceiling. Danny ran around the room, looking at everything. I sat on the edge of the bed and just watched her. Her joy and enthusiasm made me feel great sharing it with her. Suddenly, without looking at me, she threw herself on the bed, knocking me over. She showered me with kisses and told me several times that she loved me. Looking at Danny at that moment, I felt strange. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but it felt empty. My father and grandfathers on both sides always told me that when you meet the one, you'll know it. Danny and I had been together for almost a year, and I probably felt comfortable with her and wanted to marry her. "Oh damn," she said. "I need to text Emma and make sure she's on board." Damn, I wanted to take some pictures of us leaving the dock. "See what you've done? You brought me here to seduce my virtue," I said. Danny," I said. "We haven't really done anything yet. But wait until you see what I'm going to do to you later," she smirked. "And what are we going to do for the rest of your life?" I asked. But now, I really need to get on deck and see what it's like. I've never been on a ship. I am so excited. Like a hurricane, she got dressed and grabbed her camera. "Come on, dear," she said plaintively. I followed her as we walked towards the deck. I retreated into my thoughts. I knew I liked Danny. She was very attractive. She had all the qualities that men like in a woman on a superficial level. She had large breasts, although she did not have them from birth. You know what I mean. No woman is born with huge breasts. Some grow them, others buy them. Danny had the second option. It didn't bother me, and she was open about it. She also had rhinoplasty, collagen for her lips, a tummy tuck, and what I believe was hair improvement. Her hair was dyed, and she had hair extensions. Danny called it leveling the situation. According to her, if I didn't mind her removing all of her hair at the bottom, then I shouldn't mind adding some on top. She was also extremely hot. I never had to drag Danny to bed. I also never had to persuade her. She just needed a hint. In some cases, it didn't even depend on where we were or what we were doing. All my friends thought that Danny was the most beautiful woman they had ever seen and that I would be a fool to let her go. Like I said, I really liked her. Maybe all this magic is just a fairy tale after all. I've been in relationships before, and I've never experienced anything like this. And I like Danny more than anyone else. I followed her to the main deck. We found a place near the railing and watched the shore slowly recede into the distance. I was fine as long as I didn't look down. Damn, that was so far down, and there was so much damn water between me and the land. I felt a little sick. I had barely pulled myself together when I realized Danny was talking to me. She wanted me to take a photo of her near the railing. She handed me the camera, and I tried to focus on her. As soon as I succeeded, a hand passed in front of the camera. I tried to focus again. This time someone pushed me. I turned around to see the smiling face of Emma, Danny's best friend. "Hey, sailor, how about you and I go back to my cabin?" she told me enthusiastically. "Oh my God," she exclaimed theatrically. "You're married. Please tell me you're not married to that old woman by the railing." "I'm afraid so," I laughed. Danny came up to us, and they started an animated conversation, from which I was already spared. "Hey," Emma suddenly asked, "weren't you supposed to lock yourselves in your cabin and have a night for the first 3 or 4 days of the cruise? How the hell are you going to have a bunch of kids if you don't practice?" "That's exactly what I was thinking," I said, "but your friend insisted that we come out here because she's never been on a ship." "Hey," Danny said, "we have the whole cruise and the rest of our lives to do this. I'm excited. Everything is different. I'm a married woman, and I'm at sea. This is all new to me. Besides, I said, Cal has already done everything he can with me. Thanks for sharing, Danny, Emma said, and Cal, thank you for letting me come with you. That was very nice of you for someone you barely know. You're welcome, I said. You're practically family, Emma. It was strange that Emma seemed to appreciate the trip more than Danny. Perhaps it was simply because Danny and I were already used to each other, so she thought that because of our money, she was just entitled to such things. Honey, Emma and I are going to go explore the ship, maybe do a little shopping, Danny said. I know you want to go find the gym and check out the treadmill. She looked at me with a sparkle in her eyes, then came closer and kissed me on the lips. Just like with other women, she told me sternly, you can look but don't touch. Don't lift one damn barbell, don't take one damn step. I want you to save every iota of your energy for me tonight, not on some gym floor. Got it? I smiled and nodded. Seriously, Cal, she said, it's not too early for us to be thinking about starting our family. The sooner, the better. As far as I'm concerned, the only reason I can think of why I wouldn't be pregnant by this time next year is because we'll already have our first child, and we'll be working on the next one. After that, I returned to our cabin. Being on deck and seeing all that damn water wasn't doing anything good for my well-being. I took the map of the ship they gave us and looked for where the gym was. I went to check out the gym and looked at the selection of machines and weights. It's not like I'm a bodybuilder or anything. In fact, at 5 feet 9 inches and 170 pounds, I was on the smaller side of the equation. But I have been involved in sports and various activities all my life. Exercising regularly was one way to relieve the stress that my busy job created. After I left the gym, I checked the map and was surprised to find that the treadmill was on one of the upper decks. It didn't make sense to me, since each successive deck had a smaller surface area. The walkway could be larger and more stable if it were on a lower deck. I tried to explain this to one of the crew members who helped me find the path, and he just laughed. Most people on the ship are here to relax and have fun, he said. The areas around the main and large decks have a lot of foot traffic at all times of the day and most of the night hours. You'd have problems trying to walk or jog with all those people around. So, we isolated it to prevent accidents and give you a cleaner path. It really made sense. If you don't feel comfortable here, you can always run on one of the treadmills at the fitness club, he suggested. Also, very few people actually use the treadmill. Maybe they'll do a lap or two if they feel like they've overindulged, but most just put their exercise routines aside or take a break from them while they're on board. His cheerful expression and confidence in what he said made me believe that he probably thought I would do the same. I don't think he realized how obsessed I was with running. For the next hour or so, I walked around the ship, trying not to feel like I was going to puke every time I approached the railing. After some time, I was able to walk right up to the railing and even look down at the rushing water near the back and sides of the ship. Indeed, the movement of the ship through the water was barely felt. It was almost as if we were still standing at the dock. I walked around the ship from one end to the other, trying to acclimate. It was really beautiful here. The sun was just starting to set. Everywhere you looked, there were happy, smiling people trying to make the most of their time on the ship. There were people of all ages and races, families and single people, but one thing we all had in common was that none of us lived here. We were all on vacation. I became interested in watching people and eavesdropping on snippets of their conversations. It was similar to what I did in the office, trying to gain an edge over my clients. If I heard them talking to each other about problems in their businesses that could affect their ability to pay back our loans, that was a plus for me. There were several occasions when I left clients in my waiting room and eavesdropped on their conversations in preparation for our meetings. They often discussed what they should and should not reveal during our meetings. I heard one client remind their assistant not to mention anything about the fact that they expected to file for bankruptcy in less than a month. I treated them very nicely and offered them the best coffee and snacks the bank had to offer before I turned them away. My boss was furious until I explained to him what I had heard, and in fact, one of our competitors gave them a loan, a big loan, less than a month later, and the company filed for bankruptcy. My boss and I laughed until we cried. The owner of the company apparently sought a large loan to provide himself with a golden parachute to protect him when his company went bankrupt. So, I wandered around the ship, eavesdropping on people telling each other how much fun they were having and their plans for the evening and the next day. I heard people talk about how the trip might have saved their marriages and how much they loved each other. I also heard something that shook me to my core. Just as I rounded the corner, I heard two familiar voices. "You're so lucky, Danny." "Cal is a great guy," the first voice said. "Yeah, he's okay," said the second. I was shocked. After months of Danny professing her undying love for me, it hurt to hear that I was just okay. For some reason, I started recording their conversation on my iPhone. That way, if we ever fight, I can show it to her. "What do you mean, nothing like that?" "He's the sweetest guy we've both ever met. He's also handsome and not the type to ever hit you or steal from you." "I thought you loved him," Emma asked. "Yeah, I guess," Danny said. "If you don't love him, what was all your talk about having his children?" "God, Emma, are you stupid or what? I signed a prenup to prove I'm not just after his money. The only way I can get around this prenuptial agreement is if I give birth to his child. Then, I can get a good allowance, whether I stay with him or not." After that, they fell silent. "Emma, why are you looking at me like that?" asked Danny. "Damn it, it's not my fault. I've dated so many guys who just wanted to get everything they could from me. So, I thought it was time for me to get mine," Danny said. "He's a really good guy," Emma, said Danny. "He gets something out of it. I give him everything he wants. Sometimes, I give him more than he wants." "That's why you didn't stop sleeping with other guys, right?" said Emma. "What I do when he's not around is none of his business," Danny said. "Besides, just look. In a few years, he'll be entertaining his secretary and ignoring me." "I don't think he's that kind of guy," Emma said. "To hell with it, Emma," Danny said. "When I'm done with him, I'll try to arrange it so you can have him. I just want to live my life and have fun. I want to have what I want and not have to work like a damn slave to get it. I saw my chance and took advantage of it." "It's just wrong, Emma," said Emma. "He loves you. He doesn't force you to do anything you don't want. But you're making him pay for what other guys did to you. It's not fair. All men are the same. If you've met one, you've met them all. If you give them a chance, they'll all screw you over. The only difference between them is the numbers in their bank account," Danny said. I retreated and returned to our cabin. When I got there, I changed into something I could wear in the evening. About an hour later, my iPhone beeped that I had a text message. There was no cell service on the ship, but we had internet access, and my phone used the internet for texting and email. I looked at the message. "Where are you, dear?" It was from Danny. I didn't even bother answering. It hurt. Okay, I guess it was a little hypocritical to pretend my heart was broken. In the end, I was also trying to figure out if I really loved her. I think I really liked her, but I wasn't sure what love was. I couldn't say for sure that I loved her, but I couldn't definitively say that I didn't love her. I guess I had never really been in love, so I didn't know how I should feel. But I have never cheated on her and have been faithful to her in every way since we met. She couldn't say the same. On either occasion, she has been cheating on me all this time. Obviously, she entered into the relationship with selfish intentions. Her only interest was in money. I decided that I would just pay dearly for this lesson. As soon as we get back, I'll file for an annulment. I won't even need a divorce because she was insincere the whole time, and the marriage lasted less than a week. According to the terms of our prenuptial agreement, if the marriage lasts less than 3 years and we have no children, she will receive nothing. I spent the evening wandering around the ship, watching people and trying to fill the hole in my heart. Around midnight, I returned to our cabin. Danny was there with a couple of crew members and Emma. "Caleb, where the hell have you been?" she screamed, tears streaming down her cheeks. The security officers who were about to organize a quiet search for me smiled and began to withdraw. "Sorry, I was at the clinic," I said. "I guess I should have told you that I don't like ships or boats or whatever it is. I got really seasick. They gave me something to calm my stomach, and apparently, it put me to sleep right away. I'm still nauseous." The security officers laughed. "Told you so," said one. Usually, about 10% of passengers feel unwell in the first 2 days. About half of them end up flying home. "Darling, Why didn't you tell me about this? Asked Danny, her fake concern convincing. We could fly or do something else, because I love you, Danny, I said. Hell, if she could lie, so could I. You wanted to go on a cruise so badly. I would do anything for you, so getting used to the boat is nothing. Oh, Emma, she cried, glaring at Danny and shaking her head. I'll go and lie down, I said. Danny just nodded. I'll be there soon, honey, she said. As soon as the door slammed, I strained my ears trying to hear their conversation. Danny, you're Emma hissed. You don't deserve it. I hope it all comes back to bite you in the fifth place. Then it will hurt, Emma said. Emma, don't forget your place, honey, Danny hissed back. If it weren't for me, you'd be sitting in that same little apartment crying in your beer because yet another loser dumped you. And it hurts to bite anywhere. Yeah, but your fifth place is the only thing on you that hasn't been lifted or implanted, Emma chuckled. It's the only real thing about you, so it will hurt more. A few minutes later, Danny cheerfully entered the bedroom of our cabin. I mean just intim. I thought she deserved it after what she tried to do to me. After all, why should I go without intimate as long as we're here? We're married. I see no reason why my nightlife should suffer because the woman I thought loved me turned out to be nothing but a gold digger. After all, she was literally offering herself to me. She got a good life and no more stress. I got intim. It was a business deal, nothing more. The only problem with the deal was that both parties were not aware of its terms. From now on, I intend to treat it as such. But that night, I was too hurt to do anything but lie in that bed and wonder what I had done to deserve this. I've been a good guy all my life. I have never forced myself on a woman. I never took anything that didn't belong to me. I helped whenever I could, to whomever I could, and throughout my life, I have worked very hard at both my education and my career. Just because I was fortunate enough to be in a position where that hard work paid off financially, it didn't make me a bad guy or a target. Damn her, Danny. I'm sorry, I said, but I really feel bad. Oh, dear, she said sadly. Don't worry about it. She took off the rest of her clothes and crawled under the covers with me. I was surprised. I lay in bed with this body and did not show the slightest sign of reaction. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I looked across the bed at the woman I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. I wondered what it was about her that attracted me in the first place. You can't say I didn't sleep that night because I did, but throughout the night, I woke up several times and thought, why me? I wasn't completely broken, but I was upset. I was angry at her betrayal on several levels. On the one hand, she always expressed her undying love for me. She was the first to say it. I remember how she looked at me across the table with eyes full of tears after one of our petty quarrels. It was just one of those stupid misunderstandings that all couples go through, but she cried as if her dog had died or she had broken her knee. I couldn't understand it. Why? Why are you so upset, Danny? I asked her. Everything has been resolved, we're fine. You just don't understand, she told me. I love you. I cannot live without you. Those 3 little words, even though I didn't understand what she was feeling and I couldn't really say I felt it, still rocked my world. There are guys who won't understand this. Love ruins everything. I know what you're thinking. Okay, she loves you, so what's the problem? You can get more from her, or it's cool, you get all the advantages without having any weaknesses yourself. They imagine me as some lucky guy who could just break up with her when I got tired of it without getting hurt myself. On paper, this all sounds great, but the reality, however, is completely different. I was born with this terrible thing called a conscience. Immediately after she said those 3 terrible little words, she entered the active phase. I immediately felt strange. This incredible wave of sensations has passed, like just knowing that someone, another living, breathing person, loves me. I became a completely different person. The second she said those 3 words, I became responsible for her health and well-being. It was like being a gardener when you never wanted to. You leave the house to cut down unsightly weeds, to pour concrete. Once you are there, you discover a rare and beautiful flower. You didn't plant him and you didn't want him, but since he's here, you feel obligated to take care of him. What you really should do to make sure your life is as you planned is to just cut the damn thing down. But you can't. So you start watering it, trimming it, and fertilizing it. Before you know it, against all your plans, you become a gardener. After that, I began to take our relationship much more seriously. After all, I had a limited number of choices. If I did anything to piss her off or damage the relationship, I would go back to being just another guy. As long as her love lasted, I was special. I was loved. Things got worse after she started expecting me to say it back to her. It was really damn hard in the beginning. My lips didn't know how to make that sound. This word is really damn hard to say, especially if you're not sure you mean it. Finally, I forced myself to say it, expecting to be struck by lightning at any second for lying. After I said it, at first, I felt that I had broken the rules of some cosmic game. I said the word untruthfully, but then I saw the power that little word has. After I awkwardly said, "Love you too," her face just exploded into the biggest smile I've ever seen. She attacked me right there on the street. I was sure she was going to take off her clothes and make love to me right there on the sidewalk. So, I wasn't heartbroken, but I was upset by the betrayal and lies. Not only because she used the word love untruthfully, but also because she was lying. She boosted my self-esteem so much by using that word. She tricked me into doing things for her that I would never do, and all this time, she also betrayed me by having an intimate with other guys. Who knows what diseases I might have right now? As I thought about this possibility, my anger came to the fore. I rolled over, facing away from her. Danny got used to wrapping his arms and legs around me while we slept. I used to think it was cute. She said it was because even in her dreams, she liked us to touch each other. Now I realize that this is not cute at all. She just wanted to keep me under control, even when she was sleeping. I was contemplating my next move. On the one hand, I wanted to do my first run on board a ship. This way, I could decide where I would run for the rest of the trip. On the other hand, I was thinking about intimate with her, no romance, no foreplay. It would be fair, throughout this entire voyage, I intended to use her only for night. As soon as we returned to port, I would file for an annulment. Somewhere along the trip, I would have to alert my lawyer and have paperwork ready. When the ship arrived at port, I looked at her beautiful, smiling face and those big fake breasts and decided to go for a run. Seeing her, I remembered the song. Everything reminds me of music, but this line from the song was especially apt: "A plastic girl with a plastic heart can never love you." That's true, she made me go, she made me fall apart. So tell me, what should I do? That line was from the funniest damn rock song I've ever heard. It was a song called Ugly Girls by an unknown band from Michigan called Mark Flash. I saw one of their concerts in the park when I was in college. The group never became famous, but boy, were they energetic. They had the typical cute guy singer like all bands. Their lead guitarist was a black guy crossed with Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen. His devilish and unconventional playing probably made up 90% of their sound. He also wrote all of their original songs. Their bass player was a beautiful woman from Costa Rica. Every time I saw them play, they had a different drummer. They had every chance of making it big, but their offstage behavior was as explosive as their music. They disappeared, swallowed up by internal and external forces. I always regretted that I didn't have a recording of one of their concerts. I decided to go for a run. I got dressed in the dark so as not to wake Danny, although that was impossible. Danny could probably sleep through the roar of a herd. I left the cabin and headed to the deck. I went up to the upper deck near the top of the ship where the treadmill was located. I saw very few crew members this early in the morning. There seemed to be only a limited number of people operating the ship at this time of day. The view of the ocean and sky was inspiring. The sun was rising over the ocean. It was light enough for visibility. The soft pinkish hues of the morning light had not yet changed to a more aggressive bright yellow-white. The rubber coating that formed a perfect oval around the deck was calling to me, but I made it wait until I started my iPod and stretched out. I've always run with the iPod Shuffle. It's the smallest and cheapest iPod, but it's perfect for runners. As I prepared to take my first tentative steps on the rubber track, I felt it before I heard it, a very light and rhythmic stomp. By the time I looked up, she had already run past me. I smiled, straining my eyes to see her. It made things more interesting. I enjoyed competition at every level. Now, instead of just running around aimlessly, I had a goal. I started slowly, allowing myself to get used to the surface I was running on. It felt different than running on asphalt or dirt. I was sure the rubber covering covered the same carpet as the rest of the ship, and underneath was a metal deck. For the first few meters, I judged my pace based on her position and the distance between us. I started to run quite easily and noticed that the distance was not decreasing, so I increased the pace a little. I still wasn't running as fast as usual, but I was getting close. As I approached her, I began to make out her features and details, at least from the back. The first thing that struck me was how small she was. She was barely taller than 5 feet. She had very short, almost elven hair. Her legs were curved and perfectly proportional to the rest of her body. It was strange. Until now, I thought Danny had beautiful legs, but after seeing these, I realized that Danny's legs were just skinny. It's amazing how most of us men see a woman with long, thin legs like those of models and just go crazy. This woman's legs weren't nearly as long or thin as Danny's. In fact, they were on the line between perfection and muscle, not an ounce of fat on those legs. Both her calves and thighs attracted my attention, and then, like the cherry on top of a perfect sundae, her 5th place crowned those legs. Looking at her that first day made me wonder, who the hell names women's clothes? She was running in what they call boy shorts. How the hell can you call them that? Those crescent moons of a perfect but peeking out from underneath told everyone who saw them that there was no way she could be a boy. I completely gave up trying to overtake her and just settled into her pace, staying a few meters behind her. To this day, I'm not sure how I managed to escape without tripping over my tongue. After a few laps in time with her, I noticed that she was slowing down to keep distance between us. I also slowed down. Finally, she suddenly stopped. She did it so quickly that I almost ran into her. I barely had time to stop my run to avoid a collision. As a result, I stopped just a few inches from her smiling face, and what a face it was. She had the biggest smile and bluest eyes I've ever seen. Everything about that face was beautiful. She was very tanned, but it was a healthy tan, as if she had been lightly toasted in the sun, rather than that weird orange color that tanning beds give. Her hair, although short, was incredible. It was thick and wavy. She had bangs that always fell into her eyes, but the rest were very short and combed back behind her ears. What I initially mistook for reflections of the sun on her black hair were actually streaks of highlights. She had streaks and curls of blue intertwined with her black hair. She didn't wear makeup, not even lipstick. Everything about her was real and genuine, including that amazing smile. I was amazed, so amazed that I couldn't even make out what she was saying. I looked at her as she tried to point both index fingers to the sides of her head. I wondered what she was trying to tell me. Why didn't she just say it? Then suddenly, it dawned on me that she was trying to tell me to take out my headphones so I could hear her. "Hi," she said. She definitely had a southern accent to her speech. She had that way that southerners draw out every word so that even monosyllabic words take 3 days to hear. Southern accents have always attracted me. I think of all the American regional accents, this is the prettiest. In her case, it fell on a voice that sounded like honey dripping from a magnolia tree. Okay, I know magnolias don't produce honey, but damn, that's what it sounded like. Have you ever listened to someone talk and thought you immediately knew what they did? I have several friends like this. My friend Dave speaks so quickly and effectively that you can tell just by listening to him that he's an engineer. Carl spices up every sentence he makes and describes everything in terms of its value, so you know he's a banker. Just from the tone of this woman's voice, I was sure that she must be a phone Intim operator. "Do you happen to know how far we've already run?" she asked. I just stood there, taking her in with my gaze. She looked amused as I looked her up and down, taking in her every feature and size. It took me a while to realize that I was being rude. Sorry," I said. "What did you say?" She laughed, and it wasn't one of those fake girl laughs. It was the ringing and full laughter of someone who hides nothing and does not pretend. This spoke volumes about her personality and character. I asked if you knew how far we ran. She said as she spoke, she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. How many meters are there in one circle? She asked. We ran 3.5 laps. I have no idea, I laughed. So, we immediately found common ground in our mutual ignorance of how long we needed to run or for how long, she said. Well then, she said, we seem to be running at the same pace. Let's just run until we want to go to breakfast. This is the best offer I've had in a long time, I said. We started running, and it was strange. There are so many things I never hear when I run. I can't hear myself breathing. I can't hear people next to me. I can't even hear my own steps because I never run without music. This first run together was a joyful event. I enjoyed all the sounds I had never heard before, but the most incredible of all these sounds was the sound of her voice. We had a few moments during that first run that were pure magic. Our names became a source of entertainment. When she told me her name was SCA, I was puzzled. I wondered who would call such a beautiful woman such a strange name. What the hell is SCA? I repeated uncertainly. That's unusual, not SCA, she laughed. SCA. I just looked at her like she was the most beautiful girl in a crazy beauty pageant. Ska, she said. Suddenly, an epiphany occurred in my brain. Ah, sky, I said, laughing. It must be a southern thing. What's your name, funny man? She asked. Caleb, but everyone calls me Cal, I said. Caleb, she chuckled, stretching the word out so much it sounded completely different. It's such a southern epiphany name. Wasn't there a character in the movie Deliverance named Caleb? And let me guess, judging by your voice, you're from California, and you call yourself Cal? She even stretched Cal to double its length when she said this. I have no idea how far we ran that morning or how long it took. I just know that I've never had a better time. I completely forgot about all my problems and everything that was happening in my life. We went for breakfast and got there just as the first and freshest food was being brought out. We sat at a small table and just chatted about whatever we wanted. Oh, she suddenly said, you almost made me late for my class. Will we see you at the track tomorrow? Count on it, SCA, I laughed. Okay, Cal, she said as she turned to leave. She ran her hand down the side of my face, barely touching my ear. That was incredible. I've never experienced anything like this before. It was as if an electric discharge passed between us, and the gesture itself, although it seemed random, was the most intimate touch I had ever experienced. I felt more intimacy from her touching the side of my face than from all of Danny's gestures during night. I sat for a long time after she left, holding my cheek where she touched me. I understood how the schoolgirls on TV feel after being kissed by the man of their dreams. I will never wash my face again, I thought. I returned to our cabin to find Danny putting on her makeup. Her hair was in curlers, and she opened her huge makeup case, using product after product. It amazed me how much she had to do to make her face look normal. Everything she used was designed to look like she wasn't wearing makeup. I shook my head, thinking how stupid this was. It usually took her an hour to get ready for even the most informal date. Hey, Cal, she said, applying some cream under her eyes. Hi, I said. I'm glad you're feeling better. Give me 20 minutes and I'll be ready to go to breakfast, Cal. I need to go shopping. It's an emergency. Danny, I already had breakfast, I said. What emergency situation can be solved by shopping? We've been invited to sit at the captain's table for dinner this evening, she said delightedly. It's a semi-formal event. You have to wear a suit. You have a lot of suits, but I need to find just the right dress. Now that I'm your wife, I have to create the right look. Everything I do or wear reflects on you, you know? I didn't know if she really thought that way or if she just wanted an excuse to spend more of my money on clothes. If this had been last night, I would have categorically said no. I'd already decided to spend the rest of the trip having an intimate with her and then dump her cheating fifth place as soon as we docked. I intended to leave her at the dock without a trip home. But this morning, apparently, my priorities had changed. Meeting SCA showed me that there are still good people in the world. I just had to go out and find one. Okay, honey, whatever you say, I told her. You can go and check out the gym, she said. But remember, don't get too tired. We still have things to do. I was going to do some things myself. There was a knock on our door, and Emma came in. "Are you decent?" she asked. "I'm decent," I chuckled. "Have a good time, Emma." "Danny, make sure you buy something nice for Emma too." I didn't mind spending money on Emma. I actually felt better spending money on her than on Danny. At least Emma tried to stand up for me. I took a long, hot shower and dressed in jeans and a casual shirt. I grabbed my iPad from the table and logged into my email. I sent a letter to John Forey, my lawyer. He was the one who drew up my prenuptial agreement with Danny. I briefly outlined the situation and asked him to begin the annulment process. If annulment wasn't possible, I asked him to begin the divorce process immediately. I told him it was best to email me the details since there was no cell service on the ship. I also told him that at the first port of call or whenever I could, I would look for a satellite phone. I spent the afternoon organizing everything. I emailed my assistant and told her about the situation. I hired her to change the locks on my apartment, even though it wasn't necessary. I intended to give Danny a few dollars so she would just go away before we got married. Danny shared an apartment with Emma. If Emma didn't already have a new roommate, she could go back there for all I cared. It was actually a good thing that she hadn't had time to move all her things yet. This would give her less stuff to move back. I checked my bank account. So far, Danny only had one of my bank cards and one credit card. She could access my checking account but not my savings account, since most of my money was in savings, investments, or other bank accounts. I was relatively safe. I went to the gym and had a good workout. The gym had a good selection of machines, and I had no trouble finding everything I needed for my routine workout. After training, I had lunch at a small cafe on one of the upper decks. I looked at the sea and all the happy people on the ship and felt better about myself. As I sat there, I noticed several women looking at me. I would have no problem returning to social life after this, but I intended to do it in a very dignified manner. I had no intention of spending the cruise looking for someone to replace Danny or doing anything to bring attention to my situation. A little later after lunch, I received a text message from Danny. Her message said she loved me. This meant that she spent a lot of my money. She wanted me to return to the cabin no later than 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Dinner was at 6 sharp, and she wanted us to make love before getting dressed. I spent the afternoon wandering around the ship. It really was a fascinating ship. There was so much to see and do that it would take weeks to try everything. Around 3:30, I received a text message from Danny. She was furious and wanted me to return to the cabin immediately. I walked towards our cabin slowly. "Where have you been?" Danny pouted as soon as I entered. "Sorry, Danny," I said. "I lost track of time and got lost. It's a really big ship." "It's after 5, she said. "I need to start getting ready for dinner. Emma will be sitting at the table with one of the other important crew members. She'll be in the room, but she won't be sitting with us. Emma is a really beautiful girl," I said. "She'll be fine, trust me." "You sound like you'd be better off with her," Danny said sharply. "Danielle, you don't have to act stupid," I said. "I barely know Emma. You're the woman I married." An hour later, we were taken to the main restaurant and introduced to the captain and the people sitting at his table. Danny wore a beautiful light yellow dress that left little to the imagination. Every man in the room turned to look at her as we entered. The dress was cut so low in the front that almost all of her breasts were visible. She accessorized the dress with some gold jewelry, and even her shoes were in a matching gold shade. Most of the men at our table couldn't take their eyes off her, and she knew it. The other couples at our table ranged from newlyweds who were even younger than Danny and I to older spouses who had been married longer than I had been alive. Most of the people at the table were very friendly, and the conversation was fun. During dinner, I noticed that a man at one of the other tables spent most of his time looking at Danny. He was sitting with 2 other men and was wearing a suit that cost at least a couple $1,000. I knew this because I had the same suit at home and wore it to close my biggest deals. In the back of my mind, I wondered what he would be working on tonight. After we ate, the dancing began. I got up and danced with Danny. She was extremely happy about the ship, the cruise, our honeymoon, and the dinner in general. But she was still a little upset with me. As we returned to our table, I noticed one of the older ladies tapping her foot to the beat of the music. Her husband walked with a cane and had a very noticeable limp. I approached him and very politely asked him if he would give me the honor of dancing with his wife. They both smiled, and he nodded. I danced with a woman named Sally McBride. This name was familiar to me, but I couldn't remember where. As I sat down, I noticed that Danny had disappeared. I looked around and saw her heading to the dance floor with the man in the suit. He held her and pulled her much closer to him than was appropriate, and she let him. It might have been her way of getting back at me for being late, but it was truly humiliating. I watched them for a few moments and then got up to intervene before things got worse. I noticed that he put his hand down and grabbed a big piece of Danny's fifth place, and she didn't do anything to stop him. The man looked over her shoulder and grinned at me. His look told me that he knew what he was doing. It was one of those smart smiles you give to a guy whose wife you're about to seduce. Before I approached them, his two friends stepped between us. "Back off, buddy," one of them said. He put his hand on my chest as if trying to hold me back. "That's enough, take your hand off me," I said politely. His friend stood next to him. I grabbed the arm on my chest and turned it so that my elbow was pointing down. Then, with a sharp movement of my other arm, I lifted it up, breaking his arm at the elbow. The crunch could be heard throughout the room. The man's high-pitched scream sounded even louder. I raised my knee sharply and stomped hard on his friend's leg. When he reflexively tried to reach his leg, I raised my knee to meet his dropping jaw. It turned off faster than a light switch. The man in the suit turned to look at me, shock and horror written all over his face. He knew I was coming after him and began to retreat. Danny stood next to him, her eyes as big as saucers. Fortunately for both, before I could reach him, 3 of the ship's guards threw me to the floor and took me to the punishment cell. You can learn a lot about people by observing their reactions when you're in trouble. As the guards lifted me up so I could walk and tried to restrain my arms, Emma came over and tried to explain that I wasn't a very aggressive person and that something must have happened to cause this reaction in me. Danny just stood there and then left the room with the man in the suit, while Emma tried to talk them into letting me go. The people at my table also tried to protect me, but it was all in vain. 10 minutes later, I found myself in the bowels of the ship, in a room with a locked door. It was a very small room with only a table, a chair, and a bed. About half an hour after I was placed there, the guard assigned to keep an eye on me entered the room. "You have a visitor," he said, watching me carefully as if he expected me to try something at any moment. I was ready to scold Danny when the man entered the room. I was shocked. It wasn't her, it was Emma. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded. I tried to tell them it was all some kind of misunderstanding, but they didn't really listen. "You hit those 2 men hard," she said. I saw how Danny acted. I don't know why she does things like that sometimes. "Don't worry about it," I said. "As soon as I find her, I'll tell her where you are so she can come and see you," she told me. "Emma," I said. "I don't want to see her." "You don't mean it," she said. "You're just angry right now." I just looked at her. I liked Emma, but I didn't think telling her that I knew more about Danny than she thought would be a good idea. "Do you want me to bring you something?" she asked. "I wish I had my own iPad," I said, "and if you could bring its charger, that would be great." The iPad is on the table next to our bed, and the charger is in the socket. I sat on the bed, thinking about how I ended up in this situation. In the end, I didn't care about Danny. Yesterday killed our marriage. I've already started asking a lawyer to sort out the annulment. I think it was pride allowing some gorilla to grope your wife in front of you and in public requires a reaction, even if you cannot stand this cheater. After a while, Emma returned with my iPad. The guard who was guarding me let her in again. "I'm actually not sure if I'm allowed to give you this," he said. "So if this comes up, I'd appreciate it if you didn't mention it." I nodded and noticed that he seemed to be looking at Emma a lot. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" he asked. "I have studied many different styles of martial arts since I was young," I told him. He nodded and returned to his post outside. I lay down on the small, uncomfortable bed and tried to sleep. I thought that when Danny decided she wanted to come to me, they might wake me up, but she never came that night. I woke up in the middle of the night. According to my watch, it was 4 in the morning. Normally, I would get up to run after about 2 hours. When I thought about running, I thought of Sky. I knocked on the door of the room I was in and heard a bored voice. "It's open," he said. I opened the door and saw another one of the ship's guards. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Through that door," he said. Thanks, but that's not it," I told him. "I need to convey a message to someone." "Listen, buddy," he said. "I've been there. I also reviewed the CCTV footage. Those guys were trying to stop you from approaching your wife to stop her from creating this whole damn spectacle. Most of my colleagues are on your side. We only stopped you because, firstly, it's our job, and secondly, we didn't want you to kill that, I'm sorry to say, but you spent most of the night at some dance clubs with your wife. They both got drunk as hell. Can you deliver the message for me?" I asked. He nodded, and I quickly wrote a short note to Sky, telling her that I really didn't want to miss our run, but there was no way I could count on it. The security guard promised me that he would deliver it. All I had to do was tell him which cabin she was in. I explained to him that I didn't know, but if he brought her to the treadmill at 6 o'clock in the morning, he would find her. Then I went back to bed. I woke up a couple of hours later when someone knocked on my door. The first guard returned. He looked inside and told me that I had a visitor. "This is..." I started. "This is not the woman from last night," he said. "Tell her I don't want to see her," I said. He nodded and went outside. A few minutes later, he returned. "She says she doesn't care," he said. Before he could say anything else, Sky slipped between him and the door. "Why don't you want to see me?" she asked. "I didn't do anything to you," I said. "Sorry, Sky, I thought you were someone else." I shrugged, and the guard left. "So who did you think I was?" she asked. "It seems pretty weird that you don't want to see anyone when you're stuck here." I just looked at her and shrugged. "Oh, her," she said. "I guess I can understand that. Isn't it?" I joked. Seeing her greatly improved my mood. "Do you really have to be on deck and run?" "I decided to take the day off," she smiled. "I have a friend who needs me, really." I said, "Who?" "You stupid," she winked. "So what are we going to do with our morning hours before breakfast? You know the whole ship is talking about your situation. Even the crew is discussing it. More than half of everyone thinks that you got it unfairly, the others are afraid of you. Why should anyone be afraid of me?" I asked. "Well, duh," she said. "You sent 2 big guys to the hospital faster than a cat can lick itself." It was so fast that the guards, who are trained to recognize and respond to such situations, didn't even realize what was happening. The guy whose arm you broke at the elbow had to be sent to an orthopedist. The doctor on board the ship was unable to cope with the severity of the fracture. He may never regain full function of his arm. The other guy didn't fare well either. He had to have his jaw wired shut to let it heal. You also broke 3 bones in the top of his foot." She simply shook her head and smiled. "And everyone on the ship is completely outraged by your wife. She was out clubbing with that man most of the night. Most passengers want nothing to do with them. I'm one of them, so when she comes to see you, I'll leave and come back later." "You don't have to leave," I said. "I won't see her." "Oh, you're just mad at her now," Sky said. "Come on, you're newlyweds. There are always some problems that happen during the honeymoon. This is truly the time when 2 people have to get used to the idea of being together forever. Getting used to living together instead of just dating takes time." "Sky, my marriage was over before that happened," I said. "In recent days, I have been analyzing our relationship and probably noticed that something was missing in it. I've always heard how great it is to be in love and all that, but the problem is that I've never felt anything like that. Sure, Danielle is beautiful in an obvious way that appeals to most men, but I just don't feel a strong emotional connection to her. You're probably asking yourself why I married her, aren't you?" Sky crossed her arms and nodded but didn't say anything. To tell the truth, it was a mistake. It was a bad turn of events. It was fate or luck or whatever. We dated for a long time, more than a year. All my friends, at least the male ones, told me that I should not let her go. She always told me that she loved me, so I guess I started telling her that because it seemed like the right thing to do. Sky's mouth dropped open in surprise. Okay, stop. Don't say anything. Let me finish, I said. Sky, I didn't know how I should feel. I've never been in love, so how the hell could I know what it feels like? I actually believed that it might come later or that maybe I was just incapable of it. Either way, I intended to spend the rest of our lives together, taking care of her. Hell, I even went on that damn cruise for our honeymoon because that's what she wanted. I spent the last year doing a lot of things I didn't like because she wanted me to. Why didn't you want to go on a cruise? Sky asked. Because I hate boats, I said. I'm deathly afraid of drowning. When this thing goes down, I'm also afraid of heights, so being on such a big ship for me is double punishment. She finished for me. And you did this for a woman you don't really love? Sky nodded. So how do you know you don't love her now? She asked. You may love her, but since you don't know what love is, you don't recognize it for what it really is. No, I said. I am 100% sure that not only do I not love her, but I never have. How can you? Sky began. This woman really liked to go through everything to the end. Let's leave this conversation for later, I said. Besides, it doesn't matter whether I loved her or not. She never loved me, she was simply using me to improve her lifestyle. I overheard her talking to her best friend yesterday before all this. I married him so I wouldn't have to work, she said. It was terrifying. She also told her that she needed to get pregnant as soon as possible. Why does she need a child if she doesn't love you? Sky asked. We have a prenuptial agreement, I said. My lawyer insisted on this. If we divorce in less than a reasonable period of time, she will get nothing. On the other hand, if she gets pregnant, I will be legally obligated to support my child, which will give Danielle a financial connection to me. She's really mean, Sky said. I still don't understand why she hasn't come to see you yet, Sky said. This is how Danielle reacts to every fight we've ever had, I said. She gets angry and then runs away, and we don't see each other for days. If she thinks she's right, then she expects me to make the first move and call her. If she knows she's wrong, then she'll come back crying and sniffling, begging me to forgive her. It usually doesn't matter who's wrong, the makeup intimate is phenomenal. Too much information, Sky said. So what will you do when she shows up? It doesn't matter, I said. I'm done with her. I've already got my lawyer to start the annulment process. If the annulment fails, he will begin the divorce process. How can you get an annulment if you've already had intim? Sky asked. Easy. Revocation rules have been updated in our state to reflect modern relationships. Since most couples have already had a night long before marriage, annulments are allowed for a variety of reasons. One of them is if the marriage is dissolved within a certain, very short time period. In my case, I had my lawyer start the process less than 24 hours after the ceremony. Another reason is if the marriage is concluded under false pretenses. Now I know that Danielle only married me for my money. Money, I said. I am very confident that I will get an annulment. Okay, I hate asking you question after question, Sky said, but if you don't love her and are going to kick her out the door, why are you so upset that she let that man touch her? Sky, it was humiliating. It was a matter of pride. I didn't care if she met him later and slept with him, as long as it was discreet. But just letting some guy touch her in public while I was around was beyond insulting. You need to know Danielle to understand her motives. She did it for one reason. She was mad at me because I didn't come back to our cabin to have a night with her before dinner at the captain's table. It was her way of showing me that if I wasn't careful, she could easily find someone else, Sky asked. She's really quirky, isn't she? I just smiled and nodded. Okay, stop talking about your wife, she said. What do you usually do here for fun? Sky, I'm in jail, I said. No, darling, she said. We're in jail. From the first moment I met Sky, I knew something was wrong with her. I always felt strange around her. It was like she just belonged in my life. When she said we're in jail and called me honey, I didn't know what to feel. I just wanted to smile, but it wasn't the kind of smile where you move your mouth to show happiness. It was that smile that comes from within and just explodes through your mouth because you really are so happy. So, what games do you like? I asked. What do you have? We started playing Monopoly on my iPad. Believe me, this was not my idea. I didn't want to use it. After all, I am a professional financial advisor, or at least that's what I thought, until she beat me. She was still laughing about it a couple of hours later when the security guard came in and told me I had another visitor. Sky and I looked at each other. It's not her, the guard said. I remember that you don't want to see her. It's not like she was trying to see you anyway. This is the lady from last night, very beautiful, who came to you first. He's talking about Emma, I told Sky. This is Danielle's best friend. I overheard Danny telling her everything. She is a good person. Do you think she's here on behalf of your wife, Sky? I asked. I'll go and get us breakfast while you talk to her, Sky said. I nodded, and the guard let Emma into the room. She and Sky looked at each other curiously. Who's your friend? Emma asked. I met her yesterday while I was running, I said. Have you had breakfast yet, Emma? I could go and get you something, Emma offered. Sky will bring us breakfast, I said. She's already coming for him. Cal, I spoke to the captain, Emma said. He's really confused. Most people on the ship think you got it unfairly, but there is a small group of people who want you to stay locked up. The captain also has the problem that there have been thefts and other crimes on board the ship. I think they're trying to tie you to all this. Don't worry, Emma, I smiled. I'm fine. What did Danny say when you talked to her? She asked. Emma, I haven't spoken to Danny since last night, I said. Emma looked worried. What's wrong, Emma? I asked. Well, nothing, she said. Emma, you can also tell me. As far as I can tell, nothing you say will scare me. No, it's really nothing, Emma said. I just thought she was here with you. I'll go and find her now. Emma, don't worry about it for me. I'm so mad at her right now that her absence is probably for the best, I said. But, Cal, you know how she gets when she's angry. This entire honeymoon was one problem after another, and she blames herself. At first, you couldn't, on your wedding night. She blames herself because she didn't really know you were going to get sick. And yesterday, Cal, you should have seen her. She dressed up like that in her best lingerie and waited for you all day, so she was already angry when you went to dinner. She thinks that you are already tired of her. What do you think of our story today? In the first part, I felt most sorry for the husband who found out his wife's cruel intentions. What is your opinion, and are you looking forward to the second part? Write in the comments. Until new videos.